Guys, this is reasonable. We are so glad that you're here watching this. Nathaniel and I have been going through different aspects of the Christian faith, finding those things that people might have questions about, and we're trying to answer those. Nathaniel had this awesome idea of talking about the places in the Bible where people messed up, like the real bad ones. Because the whole thing is like, if you're going to tell a story and try to convince someone to be on your side, typically you're not going to tell them the stories that are real bad.
Yeah. Like if I wrote a story about how I am God, I would kind of just push, under the rug all of the bad things that I've done and being like, look at this perfect life that I have. But in the Bible, we see that that's not the case. I mean, it is for Jesus because he was perfect, of course. But everybody else that God used is just a bunch of screw-ups and a bunch of failures. And it's because that's all of us. Like, all of us make these mistakes. And if the Bible wasn't true, and if they made up this story, or if they were concerned about looking good instead of with the truth, they would take those things out. They would omit them. But we still find them in the Bible. And that's throughout the, everything, starting with Adam and then ending, with the disciples and even in Acts, the church and stuff like that. When
we talk about mistakes that people made in the Bible, what's the first one that comes to your mind?
I think the first one that comes to mind for me is Peter. I love that guy. He's so crazy. He's the most zealous, passionate dude. Yeah. He's just going. Jesus tells him to go and he's just running. And Jesus is I didn't even, you missed your turn, dude. There's this amazing part in the Bible where Jesus asks the disciples, he says, who do you guys think I am? Because there was a bunch of confusion about who Jesus was in his time. And Peter goes, you're the Christ, you're the Messiah, the one that the Bible has been about, that God is going to use to save us. And Jesus is like, well done, Peter. This is revelation from God himself given to you. I'm going to build my church on you. And then the very next thing that Jesus says to Peter is, get behind me, Satan. Because Peter was like, no, Jesus, you can't die. That's never going to happen. You're going to live. And Jesus says, get behind me, Satan. It's the biggest, crash in my opinion, the entire Bible, the quickest crash in the whole Bible. Yeah. It's awesome. If this wasn't true, if these authors weren't concerned about the truth, Peter would have been like, oh, please take that out. That looks really bad for me. I don't want to be looking like that. But, these disciples were so concerned about the truth that they left it in.
Yeah. Mine is King David. That guy stands out the most to me. My name's David, so I mean it's
not King David.
Not King David. No, not King David, but David nonetheless. So I think about David, and you often hear about King David as one of the greatest kings in Israel's history, and it's absolutely true. But he messed up bad,
yeah, royally, pun intended.
Real bad, right? So his story starts off by saying, when in the season when kings go to war, David was at home. So it started off that he was not in the right place. He was lazy. And then it says he was walking around his roof. He was looking out and he saw this lady taking a bath. And he was like, hey, that's a lady taking a bath. And that was another mess up. And then from there, he calls the lady into his quarters, and they, things happen. And then it turns out she gets pregnant because things happened. She gets pregnant, and he's like, oh no, what do I do? Uriah was one of his mighty men.
Yeah.
Uriah was one of his 50 closest
homies.
Yeah. So he brings in his girl, one of his best friend's girls, gets her pregnant, and then he's like, oh, what do I do? Because Uriah's out at war right now, where I should be. So he calls Uriah home, and he says, hey, hang out with your wife, and hoping that they would, that would, hang out. So, but Uriah is a good dude, and Uriah says, no, I'm not going to do that. So instead of sending Uriah back where he was, David sent Uriah to the front line of battle, which is in all essence murder. Mm-hmm. It's a death sentence. Yeah. So he knew that Uriah was going to die, and Uriah died, and it all started with David not being in the right place. But if you were to count like in today's world, like the really bad things that people do, I think adultery and murder are like in the top 5.
Yeah.
For sure. And David committed both of those in a really short period of time.
So the Bible in no way is saying that these failures are okay, but it's including them because they wanted to be truthful. They wanted to tell the whole story and not hide anything, not be sneaky. They were really concerned about the truth.
Yeah. And this is just 2 of the countless. No, they're countable. Like you could count them.
Yeah, you could definitely count them. Like all the way back to Abraham.
Yep.
You know, he messes up just real quick, actually. He goes back and forth as well. He's like, goes from like, you know, sleeping with another woman because he doesn't trust God, but then later he's like super on fire for God, like willing to follow God to sacrifice his son.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like the, you know, back and forth, and we can relate to that totally.
Yeah.
So all the way back to Abraham, and he's the father of our faith. Like he
Yeah.
is one of the greats, like the start of, you know, the Christian walk.
And if you're having trouble kind of wrapping your head around why the Bible would do that, beyond this idea of like why would they write it if it, you know, if it wasn't true, why would they include something like that? Here's a really cool thought, is that the Bible goes out of its way to just mar the reputation of almost everybody. There's only like 2 or 3 people in the entire Bible that doesn't get just destroyed.
Yeah.
But the whole point of that is to show Jesus as the perfect one. You could look at the prophets that did bad things. You could look at the kings that did bad things. You could look at the judges that did bad things.
The judges are real bad.
Yeah. Like you could look at all of these different things. And what that sets up is that Jesus is the perfect prophet, that Jesus is the perfect king, that Jesus is the perfect judge. There is a beautiful poetry to Scripture that not only the mistakes that the Bible records kind of adds to the validity of Scripture, but it also just is some poetic beauty that points people to Jesus. And as you read through Scripture, you can find it over and over and over again. You just got to read it. Thank you so much, guys, for watching Reasonable. We hope that this blesses you guys. Make sure that you subscribe to our page, follow us, like us, do all of those things. You can read about how to follow us on socials down in the description. Anything you want to add?
Nope. Love God, hate sin.
Hit the button.
Hit the button.
Love God, hate sin.
Oh, that's where you were going with that.
Yep. Love God, hate sin.
Don't push your luck. I said hit the bell earlier, but don't push it.
God bless you guys. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.